Hello and welcome. Oh, wait, hold on. That's better. Hello and welcome back to Own Guard Solutions. Today we're going to be talking about a get home bag, or a GHB as you'll hear them referred to quite a bit. I'm going to take you through my personal get home bag. I'm hoping today serves a couple of purposes. It's been a minute since I've been through mine. So today's video is not only to show you, and I haven't pre-checked this bag. We're going to open it up and I'm going to show you what's in it as it is right now. But the first purpose of today is to do just that, to take you through my get home bag and show you what I carry in it. And of course, there's some suggested gear that you should have in your get home bag, and I'll point those out as we go. But the other thing is, because I haven't been in this bag for a little bit, and I do check expiration dates, I do replenish the water in this bag frequently, but it's been a little bit, a few months since I've last looked into this bag, because hopefully you're not going to need your get home bag all the time unless things have really gone sideways. But this is going to be an opportunity not only to show you its contents, but also a chance for me to maybe reconsider whether or not I actually need the things that I have in this bag, to potentially, maybe not on the video, but go through, double check expiration dates, go ahead and replace my water in this bag today. Again, some of this I won't do on the video, but I'm at least going to show you what's in here, and then it's going to be an opportunity for me to see if I'm missing something that I need to add to the bag, or hopefully, from my perspective, cull the things out that I don't necessarily need at this point in time. So again, a get home bag is a bag of some sort that you keep supplies and gear in that are going to support you in getting back home again if you find yourself, should you find yourself stranded or stuck away from home. And so, you know, we're talking about everything from weather, natural disasters, gridlock traffic, nuclear war, even though that's extreme, extreme incident that might occur, but anything that could keep you from getting back home. This has supplies and gear in it to help your journey in getting back home. And you need to consider not just yourself. If you lived with a loved one, or children, if you have children, you need to think in terms of gear that everyone needs, and then think through the situations and scenarios that might apply to you, be applicable to you, so that you can figure out how much gear and the right sorts of bags you need to have on hand. So I'm going to scoot this one back over real quick again, just to kind of set it down and get it ready to get open. So this is the bag that I bought a number of years ago for myself. And as you can tell, it comes off, it has a tactical-like color to it, some sort of green, shade of green. It has all the MOLLE straps on it. Very, very military-esque, very, very tactical. I did not buy this bag specifically for that look. I bought this bag at the time in the spirit of transparency because I was being cheap, and I got this bag at a pretty good deal, and it was big enough, I thought, for the gear that I wanted to carry for myself. But you're going to decide for yourselves what's appropriate, and it doesn't have to be some kind of tactical bag like this one may be. I don't particularly like the vibe of this bag, and that's something to consider. There's a lot of tactical gear out there, and I'm not always a proponent of it. Mainly because when it comes to something like this, one consideration to have is keeping what you're doing and where you're going on the DL. And you can't do that if you look like the hot stuff military personnel. You don't want to draw a lot of attention to yourself. So that is one drawback sometimes of carrying the tactical equipment, is, you know, it looks the role. So certainly not something you need to consider. I did not do it for this bag. Again, it was a price point choice for me at that time. I would like to find something different, and probably will here soon. Plus this bag is showing some signs of wear, likely because it is fairly old now, and I didn't spend a lot of money on it. But you don't have to do a backpack. You can take the water bladder out or not and use the space that's available in some of the backpacks or sling bags that you keep your water reservoirs in. You know, if you happen to be hiking or a mountain biker and outdoors a lot, you might be able to use one of those bags if it's got enough room in there for your stuff. A messenger bag, you may have seen in another previous video I just did talking about what you should carry in your basic trauma kits. If you saw that video, you likely saw, if you were paying attention, my messenger bag that I use to keep a trauma kit in, and that's kind of a smaller bag. It's definitely it definitely attracts less, I think, than a bag like this would overall, and it's very easy to sling over your shoulder with a sturdy strap and carry it. Ladies, if you have a big enough purse, you could theoretically carry your get-home bag gear in a purse if that suits you. But again, you want to think about things that work for you, situations that you find yourself going to be in, and then you want to consider others around you as well, and you know, your children. What are they going to need? Food, snacks, water too, and you know, bags, either a bag for you to carry that's large enough for everyone's gear, which may not be practical for you, or you may consider that everybody in the family is responsible for carrying their own bag. You just need to outfit it for them, and let them be a part of that process. Let your children be a part of any of those sorts of processes so they learn as you go, right? So it doesn't have to be this sort of bag. A lot of options there, and it doesn't have to be a lot of money. You don't have to spend $180 on a get-home bag. In fact, you may not want to do that, or for budgetary constraints, you know, you may not want to do that. So it doesn't have to be a lot, and you've got options. This just happened to be mine. So again, a get-home bag is meant to carry about 24 hours of gears and supplies. And of course, some of those supplies are food and water. As we go through this bag, I'll point out things that are recommended for anyone's get-home bag. But I would say that a get-home bag generally, and again, you're going to figure out what's right for you, but anywhere from 24 hours or less is what I would say a typical GHB is ideal for it. It could be something as small as allowing you to get back home from the grocery store if your car dies in the parking lot and you can't call AAA, your significant other isn't home yet to come and get you, and you need to hike the few miles back to the house. That can be your get-home bag too. So again, it all depends on where you find yourself, what your routes are, what you typically do, and scenarios you think through for yourself. You've probably also may have heard, maybe not, of a bug-out bag or a bob. And a bug-out bag is almost the same as a get-home bag, except a bug-out bag is pretty much the same gear, but it's more of it, because with a bug-out bag, you're looking to support yourself for upwards of 72 hours versus the 24 that a get-home bag should support you for. So I'm going to quit rambling now about what it is and what might be right for you, and we're going to start going through my bag. Again, I haven't been in this bag for a little bit, and I'm just going to start with the outside pockets and work my way in, and hopefully I'm going to find some things I can throw out, maybe some things that I need to replace, or more importantly too is seeing if placement of the items that I have are in the right place. You know, the outside pockets being more readily accessible than maybe the bigger inside. So we're just going to start here with these outside dealios. And I can't say that I remember everything that I have in here, but I'll certainly pull it out. This top one I do sort of remember being primarily for some first aid stuff. I have a small first aid kit. I have some steri strips, some butterfly sutures in the mix here. Not out in their own pack, because this is kind of a pack. This is some lighter fluid for my Zippo lighter. You definitely should, so we've already talked about sort of two things that you should have in any get home bag that you have for yourself is one, a source of fire, whether it be a lighter or some waterproof, windproof matches, fuel for your Zippo, because we know Zippo lighters like to go through fuel, even when you're not using them. I do have a handful of nitrile gloves and some hand sanitizer. Probably don't need this in a get-home bag, but nonetheless, not a bad idea if you're going to be eating later or the kids got dirty hands. I've got gloves, so I've got enough, you know, gloves, PPE, sorry, personal protective equipment in here to cover my hands and be safe. I would say black is not the best color, and I'm not the only one that's saying this, right? Black is not the best color because if you do have to do let's say you're dealing with someone with severe hemorrhaging, you've got to find that bleed. It won't always be apparent necessarily, especially if they've got winter coats on or long pants. So ideally you want to wear something like the lighter lavender, purple, or light blue gloves instead of black. But again, something to protect you is better than nothing. So that's something I'm probably going to look to replace sooner than later. That's that bag. And again, I kind of intentionally did first aid up top, up front. This next pocket is kind of a mix of things. I've got a couple of glow sticks in here, which are fantastic. We've talked about that in a prior blog post. I'll let you go read that on our blog. We've mentioned potentially carrying glow sticks in our more recent video on what to keep in or near your basic trauma kit. They're great because they put out a lot of light for their size and they don't require batteries. Windproof matches. This is a pretty fancy pants, windproof, waterproof canister that have some big matches to go. Again, having a fire source is important. So, you know, this seems silly, but it's really not. In the spirit of fire, I have a big wad of dryer lint in here. Now, I probably should have taken some time and melted some wax and put this in there, but I keep this in a Ziploc baggie, and the dryer lint can make, as long as you keep it dry, can make excellent fire starter. So just another for the fire. I happen to have, in this case, a Gerber multi-tool. You definitely want to look to have a multi-tool, and multi-tools are just that. They really can be handy. You might consider a multi-tool over a knife of some sort, but either way, a knife or a multi-tool is also gear that you should definitely have in your get-home bag. This is kind of an odd one. They're relatively cheap. I think for 15 bucks or less, you can pick up 2 of these, and this is basically a water spigot wrench to fit the water spigots you might find on the outside of a government building or something similar, like a school. They typically don't leave the nice knobs that you probably have on your outdoor spigots on your house at your home. This wrench provides 4 different sizes. I don't know if you can see them or not, but it basically provides, or it does provide, 4 different sizes of square, so you can get onto most any of those industrial or government building water spigots. And why is that important? Why have this tool? It adds a little bit of weight, so why would you have it? Well, there's no guarantees that there's gonna be fresh water if something, if the shit hits the fan, right? There's no guarantee of safe water source through the normal routes. The grocery stores may have sold out of it. Any water you carry in your bag, you and your family have already consumed. You may need a source. And I would recommend, if times are hard, that you boil that water source, but being able to get to water that you may not easily be able to access any other time, that's what this affords you to. This is more fire starting tinder. Except this is a commercial. This is a wet fire. I'm not going to promote this. I'm just telling you what's in my bag. And nothing you see here are we an affiliate with or being paid for in any way. I'm literally just showing you what I have in my bag as we go. So these are little squares you tear out of the packet. Another great way of having a means to start a fire. And that is the end of my outside pockets. We're going to go to this middle pocket here and see what's in here. If I know me, more of my medical gear. So this is the next step up, you know, with a kit like this, and even the steri strips, the butterflies, you know, we're talking about basic first aid needs with that stuff. Here we get a little more into the basic trauma, and this is another place I keep trauma gear. So some sterile gauze, which I highly recommend for any basic trauma kit, a quick clot trauma pack, and again, we talked about all of this stuff in our previous video on what you should keep in your basic trauma kit, so I'm not going to cover it here, but I'm just showing you Israeli bandage. I have a CPR mask that I keep in here. And I think at the time that I last looked to add things to this kit, COVID had just hit, so I added some N95, not the K N95, not the Chinese crap, but genuine NIOSH approved N95 masks. You know, viruses spreading, pandemics, you know, aren't the only reason to have an N95 masks, so not a bad idea to keep. I have a bandana, fantastic to have on hand anytime. And so if it wasn't obvious, yes, first aid and basic trauma are gear that you should definitely keep in any such bag. A bandana, just a plain, cheap, inexpensive bandana is great. A handkerchief, a triangular bandage, an arm sling, a means to, if you ran out of gauze, another means to stuff a wound, or more like put compression on that bleeding wound. Of course, more gauze. I have some tape in here for bandages and sprains. I have a SAM kit for splinting and tape to hold on the splints that I haven't bothered taking out of the package because there's no real reason to, so just keeping it together. For me, this is great to have on hand. You may find that you don't want splints, and so you don't have to, but certainly something to consider. Pens to be able to write your notes if you're helping someone else. I have, and you know, pens and notepads are optional, but I keep them in my kit. This happens to be a Write in the Rain notepad, so you can actually write on the paper when it's wet. It allows for a lot of different things to be used as a writing utensil on this paper, which is great. And then I have a couple of pens, one of which is a space pen that pretty much will write upside down, underwater, anything. Again, kind of optional gear, but a nice to have. You may want to consider, and I have some instruction manuals in here for like my crank radio. Probably should take this stuff out now that I'm thinking about it, so good to go back through here. And then, you know, if things go sideways, you might not be able to rely on your GPS on your smartphone. So having, you know, a local map where you're at isn't a bad idea. And then I think that's everything else. The last thing in here is some shears to go along with the basic trauma. So I have a lot of first aid and trauma related stuff in my pack, and I acknowledge that. And for me, with my level of training, I accept that that's part of my kit, my go kit, if you will. And so, yeah. But nonetheless, a good opportunity to probably shed some of this stuff and therefore some weight. And, you know, certainly weight is something that should be on your list of considerations too as you go. And last but not least, oh wow, okay. All right, so one of the essential things that you absolutely should have in any size go bag, and of course it just depends on the amounts, you know, based on the go bag size that you have for yourself, is food and water. And so I have a whole smorgasbord of snacks. I've got some freeze-dried food, which, you know, will go bad over time, so you might want to eat it up if it's getting close and then replace it. Maybe freeze-dried food is over the top for you, don't have to have it. But the nice thing about it is it doesn't take up a lot of space, really. These are big packages width and height-wise, but super thin. And it's very lightweight, most importantly, so you can get entire meals with freeze-dried food and it not take up a lot of space and be very light for you. I have, won't go through it all, but I have like some Cliff bars in here. Who doesn't love a tasty Cliff bar? But hey, when things are bad, these things come in handy. I try to find foods that are higher in protein. And I'm sure there's better option than these, but again, this is what I have, and I'll just look for the expiration date on these from time to time to make sure we're still good, but I'll do that later. Talking about water supplies, one of the things that I keep in my kit, and this is optional but still a good idea, is a life straw. It's just the choice that I opted. It's lighter and takes up less space than an entire water filtration system might, which I also have for backpacking. You might consider the potable water pills that you can drop into whatever size container of water you have and let that sit and dissolve and sanitize your water that way. I would still probably, unless things are really desperate and you don't have any means, if you had to go to extremes like this, look to boil that water first. I did get this can opener. It's a very cool can opener. I'll show you real quick. I did get this can opener from Japan. All things from Japan are cool. Even if you don't need them, they're cool. But I got a can opener because you never know. You might have to have a can of food in here. You might be desperate and have to run into the store and pick up a can of soup. And if they don't have the pull top lids, you know, whatever's in a can, vegetables and otherwise, can opener could come in handy. This seems a little bit over the top, but again, you're trying to get home. You know the gear that you should have, the food, the first aid, the fire, and all of that. But you also want to think of stuff that would make things a little bit easier. The drawback to this thing that makes things potentially a little bit easier is it does add weight. So something for you to consider. The next thing that I have is a form of shelter. This just so happens to be basically an emergency blanket, but in the form of an emergency blanket sleeping bag. I don't know if you can see the picture there. There's all kinds of brands of emergency blankets. Even if you don't get a bivy sack or a sleeping bag, this is more like an emergency bivy now that I'm reading the label, but even if you don't get something like this, emergency blankets you should have in your kit to stay warm in emergencies and bad weather and everything in between. They're usually made out of Mylar, or at least have a Mylar or similar liner, and it helps reflect your body heat. Highly recommend emergency blankets, or in this case, a bivy. A pair of decent work gloves. You never know when you need gloves. Recommendation. I have a kind of a military-esque mug. I can use this for any number of things. Drinking out of being the most obvious, but also I can cook and boil that water. Once I get a fire going, I could use this, even though it's small. I'm not going to be making a big family pot of beef stew or anything, but I can boil and get some water hot for my freeze-dried food. Or if I got nothing but dirty water and I get it cleaned up a little bit, I can use this to boil the water in. So not a bad idea to have. I want to go to water next, since that's a must for any get-home bag. And I'm kind of moving away from plastics in general, but just for overall longevity, avoiding the whole BPA thing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I elected to go with the stainless steel clean canteen. It's a quart. Is it a day's worth of water? No, but you want to talk about keeping your weight somewhat under control. This 1 quart of water is heavy enough. This is something that you would likely insist that every member of your crew carry for themselves. Of course, ideally, you should allow for 1 gallon of water every day for every person. That might be beyond what you're willing to carry, but if you have a family and you have perfectly healthy kids and significant others, then there's no reason they can't carry their own. You know, you might sacrifice some gear, like maybe a little bit of trauma gear, maybe, for additional water, but just know this is where a lot of your weight's going to come from, but it's an absolute must-have for any get-home bag. And I would argue that a quart, probably better to have 2 quarts, but I would argue that at least 1 quart is absolute bare bones minimum, and certainly better than trying to cram a couple of 16-ounce water bottles in here. That's just my opinion. Because again, like for example, like I do, I typically, and some argue you shouldn't, but I typically keep this bag in the trunk of my car, and I don't want plastic water bottles back there in the summer heat, or year round for that matter. I have an inexpensive Mora knife in my kit. These things are, I'll say, unless something's changed, well under $20, and let's just say under $20. If you're looking for an inexpensive blade, and of course, you know, they're nice for the money. I wouldn't say that you can baton with them or anything like that, but if you need an inexpensive blade to throw in a kit that you don't use very often or you don't care about because you don't use it very often, a Mora knife you can't go wrong with. And again, a knife and or multi-tool are must-haves for your get-home bag. Not too much time on this, but it does add weight. Is for me personally, I keep an extra box of defensive ammo. This is just hollow points, but it's a box of 50. Do I need 50? I don't know. Where am I going to find myself? What situation am I going to find myself in? Am I going to have time to get to them to reload? But I elected to keep extra 9mm in my kit. That's something you'll have to decide for yourself too. Perhaps one thing that could go out if you're looking for weight savings. I have a hand cranked weather radio that not just does weather, but does, you know, FM, and looks like you can get AM on this. It's a hand crank, but it's also solar powered. I would definitely recommend one of these for your kits. If nothing else, keep track of the weather, and if there's crazy things going on in the world, say what you will about the news, but at least you can stay up to date somewhat with what's going on if you have one of these. I'm trying to avoid the clothes, but I guess we'll do that next. So I keep a set of clothing, a change of clothing, and that's something else that you should definitely have in yours. I don't really swap the clothing out based on the season. I could, but I kind of kept that in mind, knowing that I didn't want to do that regularly. So I kind of just stuck with what works for me. I have a pair of long wintertime hiking socks. I have a pair of, I think these are 511 cargo pants. Again, tactical, might stand out of a crowd. Of course, these days, maybe not so much, but that's just what I opted to carry, put in mind. I have a t-shirt, and I really need to do a better job folding this stuff, but I have a t-shirt and then a pair of unmentionables. Isn't that what they used to say? Grandparents used to say unmentionables, you know, a change of clothes. And if you like, you can swap out this stuff with shorts in the summer and ankle socks, you know. As far as a spare pair of shoes or some shoes that I can change into, I keep those in my trunk because I figure that's one of the first things I'm going to need to do or want to do. So I keep them accessible right in my trunk and not in my bag. But, you know, a change of clothes and a spare pair of shoes is a good idea. Another highly recommended thing that should be in any GHB is some paracord. Usually paracord, you'll find it in all different types of strength levels, usually in the pound strength. Most basic paracord is 550 pound tensile strength. They make it 1,000 plus, I think. I know they make 1,000 because I have some, but get yourself some paracord in here. This is 100 feet. I'd say that's a good amount. Why? Because you can tie all kinds of stuff with this. You could make shelter with this, which is why you should consider this, is if you have to make makeshift shelter, say that a bunch of times fast. If you have to make makeshift shelter off on the side of the road, up in the woods, and you got your tarp, this is a great way of stringing up a tarp, building lean-tos. I mean, the things that you can do with paracord are endless, and it doesn't help if you could use some and you don't have it. So this is definitely a must-have for a get-home bag. I have a belt to go with my pants. Assuming I'm carrying, I'll need that to hold up my holster. So that's why I wanted to make it a point specifically to include a belt in my change of clothes. Yes, it adds weight, but I don't know what I'm going to be wearing when I'm out. I don't know if I'm going to have the right belt on if I'm coming from the office. So just for me, that's probably something I could get rid of, seeing as how I have on a belt of some sort most of the time. But I was thinking of the, what if scenarios. What if I didn't? What if I needed a spare? And I could use a belt to tie some things up, even though it's not for use as a tourniquet. They don't make good tourniquets, contrary to what Hollywood shows us. There's a whole lot of reasons I kept that in here. I've got some storage bags. Again, probably don't have to have this, but I could shove wet clothes into this. I could wrap things up to bury to come back to later if I needed to. Not a must-have like many of these other things, but for me, I chose this. It's basically, well, it is a ginormous reinforced Ziploc type of bag. So I keep this in here. I have a titanium spoon and fork combination together so I can eat my freeze-dried or canned foods or whatever else I find myself with. I added this. This is not a have to, but again, thinking about nourishment and supplementation and making eating easier, I put this in, and with it being titanium, it's practically weightless. I just want to talk about the last two things, and I'm going to change up the order for no particular reason. Is I got a tarp. Why? Ground cover, a makeshift lean-to tent. I can wrap someone up in combination with an emergency blanket or the emergency blanket bivvy and trap more body heat. Even though this doesn't have a reflective liner, I can roll somebody up in this and make a heater burrito for them with it, which you might learn about if you learn about hypothermia. Making that heater burrito is a great way of getting someone's core temperature back up when they are frozen. But shelter was my main reasoning for including this in your get-home bag. And again, we're talking about 24 hours, so more than likely overnight, right? So, hotel may not be available. Your best friend's house or your family's house might be, a really long way away and just not be an option. So shelter is a must-have. Food, water, fire, and shelter, right? And the last thing, which kind of doubles in usage potentially, is I bought a Swiss camo military surplus poncho. And the reason why I did the military is because I was thinking about some form of camo that would work in the area, or work somewhat well in the areas that I typically find myself in here in Georgia. And I'm not saying the Swiss camo is the absolute very best, but the criteria that I used is some form of camo that seemed like it would work across multiple seasons potentially. It is a poncho and not a rain jacket and pants. Some argue that a poncho is the best form of rain protection that there is, so I kind of had that in my mind. And then the last thing you may have guessed by now is, because it looks awfully familiar, awfully similar to this kind of, is that I could use a large poncho like this one as shelter or additional shelter if I needed to. So that is everything in my kit. As it is, looks like there's a couple of things that I need to check up on. Definitely going to update the water in my canteen there. We've talked about the must-haves, the first aid, the knives, the means of fire, maybe more than one. And don't just throw a Bic lighter in your kit and expect that thing to be the go-to for fire. They do run out of fluid in time. They will lock up where you can't get the wheel to work, so it may not work when you go to need it. So consider a couple of different things, whether it's flint and steel, weatherproof matches, and/or a Zippo lighter. Fire's a must. First aid, a change of clothes, a knife or a multi-tool, as we've shown you, a hand cranked and/or solar charged weather radio and otherwise is a great deal, a great thing to have. And I've showed you a couple of other goodies too, like the tool for industrial, industrial commercial faucets to get water if you absolutely need to, glow sticks. And of course, there's also the paracord, and the gloves are also excellent ideas, along with everything else. So you can see it's a lot of gear. I carry a few optional things that don't have to be on your list, but I think we've covered all the stuff that you most certainly want to have in your get home bag. So with that, I hope this has been helpful. If you're just now learning about GHBs, I hope we've provided you enough information to get you kick started and maybe pull together a simple basic one for yourself and your family. If you're not new to GHBs, then hopefully this has just served as a refresher course and an average Joe, or average Jim in this case, showing you what he's got in his to stimulate ideas beyond what you may be doing already. If you've liked what you've seen here, please be sure to like this video down below. Subscribe to our channel. We're still in the process of trying to figure out what content we really want to put out, so we're putting out all different sorts right now. Subscribe and get those latest updates. Thank you so much for watching today. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you soon.